Good morning. I'm going to give you an art update now. But before I talk about what I did yesterday, I'm going to mention that I'm still making my way through this book, Cartooning by Mort Gerberg. I think this book was written in the mid 1990s or so, and I think that's advantageous in a way because this really emphasizes the history of cartooning and more of the old-fashioned ways cartooning was made. If this book were written today, there would be a lot of question marks, and it would have a lot of, we're not sure what's going to work in the future, we don't really understand what's profitable and what's not, because cartooning hasn't made money in decades, and that's not really quite useful for a book. We have plenty of YouTube videos where people can speculate on the future of cartooning and how it will or won't adapt in this present age. But that's beside the point. So many times these older books are more useful. They have a lot of practical hints about sketching and sketchbooks and uh, just how to get ideas and things like that. And for modern issues, we have YouTube, which seems to be where most artists hang around. Anyway, let me mention that I finished listening to the audiobook of Citizen of the Galaxy by Heinlein. I just wanted to say a couple of words about that. Um, I found this book very enjoyable. I think I find Heinlein's juveniles more enjoyable, perhaps more interesting than his so-called, I guess, mature or adult novels. With the juveniles, he is restricted in terms of theme, I suppose, since it's a coming-of-age story, and in some ways restricted in terms of length. Since these were serialized, they had to be broken up into 3 or 4 or 6 parts. It's a little bit like how the comic strip is restricted. It's either going to be a strip or it's going to be a page in a story, and that restriction in many ways helps the artist. It helps the artist break down the gag or the action or the story into little chunks so that the artist doesn't go on tangent. In the same way with these juveniles, since Heinlein is restricted, he only has a 200 or 300 pages, or in audiobook terms, maybe 6 or 8 or 10 hours. You've just got to do the story. Anyway, I thought the story was a lot of fun. I mean, it moved along very briskly. It had some themes, some elements that I've noticed in other Heinlein works, but I think this was still well done. I can understand why some readers may find the book a little disjointed. It's really 2 or 3 stories sort of crammed together, and there's not as much thematic material that really links it all together, aside from the idea of what is freedom and coming of age and things like that. But I don't think that's really a good criticism. I think it worked well for what it tried to be. I mean, I would have liked for there to have been a little bit more closure. For instance, if maybe Thorby had gotten a message to his adopted father, who was a space gypsy, if there were some closure for all of the random people that he met who helped him out, when he becomes this billionaire Howard Hughes figure, maybe he could send them presents, perhaps anonymously, and maybe the reader could get some idea of how their lives are going. But Heinlein is not Charles Dickens, even though this book's actually a lot like Oliver Twist in some fashion. Heinlein had other concerns, and this is fine. I think the ending might have been a little rushed. It's basically he gets home, he's a billionaire, and Heinlein's kind of like, oh, how do I wrap this up? We'll have a trial. Sure. What 12-year-old boy doesn't love reading about a trial? After, we had space pirates in the middle of the book, and we're ending with a trial. I would have preferred space pirates at the end. I would have preferred action and fun at the end instead of a trial, or perhaps the trial could have broken out into a cream pie fight with the Three Stooges or something. But it's Heinlein's book. This is what he was trying to do. One last point. I haven't been able to find a lot of information, but I think the graphic novel on this book is maybe 100 pages. And that is not a graphic novel adaptation. That's a summary. If this book was 8 or 9 hours to read, the graphic novel version should be maybe 400 pages or so. The way I see it, a page in a comic book is analogous to a page of screenplay. We'll just say it's worth a minute. Of course, people will read faster or slower. Some pages are meant to be read slower if they have a lot of text or a lot of action. Some pages are meant to be very fast if they just have something very quick. That's not the point. The point is the reading experience of a graphic novel, which is analogous to that of reading a book, is going to be that page of the graphic novel should be like the page of a book, which is usually read in about a minute or so. So this book should be a ginormous manga tome, 400 or 500 pages. Obviously, not everything in the book would go in the manga. There are scenes and there are paragraphs that just need to be cut out, such as descriptions of the genealogy of Sisu. That would be an appendix at the end of a chapter, at the end of a book. And I noticed Heinlein has a lot of summary and a lot of telling instead of showing. I mean, he'll just mention scenes very quickly. Those scenes could be entire chapters, either in the book or a graphic novel, etc., etc. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on the way to adapt this, nor do I want to say that whoever adapted this did a bad job. I'm sure the people who adapted it were told, you have 3 issues of 30 pages each, and you gotta adapt a whole book. And they just did the best they could. And, artists do what they're told. They're artisans. But I'm just saying, ideally, this would be a giant manga volume, or maybe 2 or 3 smaller ones, if you're trying to replicate the same experience. But of course, the story would have to be adapted. Anyway, yesterday I actually spent a lot of time on the digital side of art, cleaning up some scans I made. But I did manage to ink this strip. I think this one turned out fine. I like the black outline. Today I'll be penciling and inking this next strip and doing some more painting. I only managed to paint about 1.5 pages in this sketchbook, and I did a little bit of line art in the monochrome sketchbook that's got red ink. Anyway, that's my update, and I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.